Thank you. We are going to begin with the first question. If the people would please take their seats. Thank you. Ms. Vitale, how would you, as a Board of Education member, support the district education needs and communicate information to the public about the board's decisions in order to provide transparency?
No? There we go. Well, the board already has some mechanisms in place. We have a town hall twice a year as a way of just creating an opportunity for the public to come and share their thoughts about what the school district is working on. We reach out to their PTAs. We meet with Board of Finance quarterly to report our work to them. But I think that we can definitely do more. I would like us to see us reach out to our seniors, reach out to the Board of Realtors, reach out to the Chamber of Commerce, reach out to the press, open to suggestions, just creative ways of connecting. And FairTV has been a godsend to us in that we encourage people just to watch our meetings live and communicate via email.
Ms. Rotelli?
Thank you. I agree with everything Christine said. I think we have great communications. Actually, I'm sitting next to one of the best distributors of information as far as Facebook and social media goes on everything Fairfield Public Schools. So I think, you know, we do our best to work with other town bodies and get the information out through FairTV and PTAs, and, you know, open to suggestions from the public.
Thank you, Ms. Gerber.
Yeah, thank you first to the League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight. Communications is something that I'm really passionate about. I had a background in public relations before I came to the Board of Education. I chaired the communications subcommittee in 2012 and 13. We had a lot of ideas, some of which the board incorporated, others of which we did not, due to some board members having issues for some inexplicable reason. So hopefully we can revisit some of those. I am very active on Facebook. I love communicating with the public. A lot of the ideas, like I said, from the communications committee, we've invested in having PTA visits. We have our town hall meetings, and I will continue to look for different ways, and I'm open to any and all suggestions from anyone in the public, and look forward to hearing that.
Thank you, Ms. Kennelly.
Hello? Okay. So I just add to what Mrs. Vitale and Mrs. Gerber, but with a few additional things. Something else that the Board of Education did was a bylaw change to add an additional public comment at our meetings, so that it was at the beginning and the end to accommodate people's schedules. We have public comment with all of our votes. We also have designated liaisons to the town bodies, so that we are always hearing what they are talking about, and that if called upon, they can be there to answer the questions of those town bodies. I also think that it behooves us to advocate for the continual engagement of the public. We heard Chief McNamara say that when we had our school safety forum, that the most important thing that we can do as a community is to stay engaged, and that's something that we as a board can continually remind about through all of these venues.
Ms. Testani?
Thank you. I also believe that there are so many services of the Board of Ed and such a plethora of knowledge in this town that we could have a vetting process, create a few more committees of the Board of Education, and have people volunteer their time. While I chaired policy in Trumbull for the Trumbull Public School System, I had a social worker on my policy committee. I had someone from the medical field. These are all issues. I had a lawyer at one point. People willing to donate their time and stay connected with their Board of Education and their schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rotelli. I'm sorry, Ms. Pitko. I always do it once. So,
Thank you.
Ms. Pitko.
I'm going to not reiterate everything, you know, my fellow members of Board of Ed have already said. We definitely tried different avenues of communicating, the town halls twice a year being one of the best ones, where you can come directly to our meeting and ask us questions, and everybody at the board gets a chance to answer. We also get lots of email. Most PTAs in this town have their own Facebook page. They take Jessica Gerber's information she posts and they post right to it. Many of us and other board members represent so many different schools in this district, so anyone can reach out to us. And we do. I see people in the grocery store. I take my kid to her baseball game, and I see people and ask me questions. But once again, if anyone has a recommendation, as a board, we're always open to it.
Now it's Ms. Rotelli. How should students' physical and mental health needs be addressed in the Fairfield Public Schools? What should remain the same, and where are areas in which improvement is something you will seek to explore?
Repeat the question, please.
How should students' physical and mental health needs be addressed in the Fairfield Public Schools? What should remain the same, and where are areas in which improvement is something you will seek to explore?
So this issue is very important to me. I have thought about this. I'm very involved in the special education PTA. We do a lot of informational meetings on mental well-being, and I think we've seen an increase just this past year, a 10% increase in mental health visits to the school nurse. It's sort of unprecedented, and we have to deal with this. So, I always think about, well, where is this coming from? I have sat in these meetings for years, and I hear a lot about achievement and scores and assessments, and rigor, and it's all a little bit stressful. And I'd like to incorporate some more holistic, like a holistic atmosphere to the way we approach our kids. And I think that behind every behavior is a feeling, and behind every feeling is a need. And we need to meet the need rather than the behavior, and deal with the cause and not the symptom. So that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Gerber, please.
Yes. Right now, our superintendent, Mr. Cummings, is working on a new district improvement plan, and I am sure that different aspects of physical and mental health of students will certainly be incorporated into that, as it was into the previous district improvement plan. I think that we always need to look for staffing. That's something that I don't think everyone necessarily understands, the importance of counselors, of social workers, of school psychologists. Those are all things that sometimes we've had to fight for in the past with the budget. And I think we could always use more of that staffing, especially in this day and age, unfortunately. I think also working with the PTAs. Our PTAs are wonderful in providing programming that parents and students and staff can utilize as well. So those are different areas. And I think also listening to the experts that we have on staff and seeing what ideas that they might come up with. Thank you.
So in addition to what's already been mentioned, we have committed and will continue to commit funding to this. And it's the advocacy for that to the other town bodies that's important, because I don't think it's the Board of Ed that needs to be sold on the importance of the mental and emotional health of our students. It's recognizing how we can achieve that. We get data from the school climate survey and other surveys that we approve that get administered to our students. And so I think we're already on a positive path. What we can do additionally is probably some more professional development with our staff and how best to embed good practices, to have best practices both with the academic component and the classroom management, and just continue. But I think we're already on a positive path, but we certainly cannot lose sight that this is something that needs continual focus.
Ms. Testani?
Thank you. Yes, this is an ever-rising need in Trumbull Public Schools and Fairfield Public Schools and all the other districts in the DIRG. The stressors on high school students, folks, is ever increasing. So in Trumbull, we implemented programs like yoga and music, different types of extracurricular elective programming that would help relieve stress. Even on the elementary level, there are studies out there that show that stress can be lessened in young children by expressing themselves through the arts. So this is something that's an ever-growing need with children, especially now, since getting into college is becoming an incredible, challenging feat these days. And it's not getting easier on our students.
Ms. Pitko?
So I've actually been teaching for 13 years. I taught middle school for 10 years, and now I'm going into, this is my 4th year at high school. I teach in Stratford at Bunnell High School, and our district, like so many districts in the state, are taking the initiative of social emotional learning. We have a program that we use every day called Move This World, and the students practice all sorts of coping mechanisms. They do breathing exercises, they write about their feelings, and at first the kids took it as a joke because they're high schoolers, but then it really, you could hear them saying the terms that were coming out of the program, and we knew that they were using them. But this goes back to, it all starts with having adequate staff for our guidance counselors, our social workers, our school psych. We really need to make sure that at every, the elementary and the secondary, that we're working with our students on the anxiety that we're feeling. We're putting so much more pressure on them in this day and age. And then you add in social media, they really need to learn how to cope with all of this. And that's part of our job, is to support the school district, to support the superintendent, and hopefully put this into the new district improvement plan.
Thank you, Ms. Vitale.
Everything that my colleague said, but I do want to just note that the school district is already doing a lot. This year, we're really moving forward with our dialectical behavior therapy, mind up exercises in our secondary schools. We're trying to get this, as Ms. Kennelly said, to be systemic. One area that I think that we really need to renew our focus is school climate. We need to really make sure that each child has at least one trusted adult in each school. And that used to be a focus a few years ago. I think we've sort of lost sight of the school climate and the work that we're doing district-wide. I know schools are each doing their own thing, but I think as part of the district improvement plan, we need to really make that a renewed focus. In terms of the physical needs, I think sensory breaks worked out throughout the day, especially for our elementary school students. You know, they're sitting a lot. Movement, helps relieve stress. So that's it for now.
The next question, we will start with Ms. Gerber. What is your position on redistricting the Fairfield Public Schools? What criteria would you use for redistricting?
Okay, well, redistricting is obviously a very sensitive topic. As the parent of children who attended an elementary school that was constantly under the specter of redistricting, I am particularly sensitive to that. I do think that while we talk about redistricting a lot in Fairfield, we do need to remember that the last time we had a full K through 12 redistricting was when we opened Burr Elementary School. Before that, the last time we had a major K through 12 redistricting was when we closed schools. So while we'd like to talk about it a lot, I'm not completely convinced that we have the space overall throughout the entire district to do that. I would also say that while we might have some issues on the elementary level, in middle and high school, our enrollments are kind of where the capacities should be. So I would be concerned about creating more issues than we'd solve. That said, we have hired experts who do this for a living. I do not. And they are going to be coming up with some ideas. So I am looking forward to seeing what those ideas will be. And if it turns out that they can provide something that will provide a long-term sustainable solution to some of the issues that we have in our district, then I will be happy to learn more about it.
Ms. Kennelly.
My criteria for making any decision regarding redistricting is very simple, is there a negative educational impact from a current situation which would then drive us towards considering a redistricting plan? If we can't make the case that there's been an educational impact, then that's not what we should be talking about. Right now, we are looking at a level facility issues, though, which are currently driving the conversation. We've got an ECC location decision to make. We have the Walter Fitzgerald campus. We have fluctuating enrollment numbers. We do have 100,000 additional square feet of school facility space to be accounted for. And all of these moving parts together, and that's where I would repeat what Mrs. Gerber said regarding, I very much await the results of what the consultants bring back to us, whom we charged with looking at this, and then will be up to us to examine, okay, these are ways we can make it happen, but what is the educational criteria for doing so? I did join the Cultural Diversity Task Force back in 2005 because at that time with racial imbalance, I was very concerned about simply marching out and doing a redistricting. And we pursued every voluntary path possible for doing it without a budget impact. And so now we find ourselves in a place that with those issues, racial imbalance, our enrollment numbers, Walter Fitzgerald, ECC, where we might have to consider this. But again, the most important criterion is what is the educational impact, and is this a path we need to pursue to be sure that we have equity across the district?
Ms. Testani.
Thank you. Yes, this is a very sensitive topic. I will agree with my colleagues here on the dais. And we discussed this 2 weeks ago at the first debate, and obviously when you look at McKinley and Holland Hill, they really are more the racially balanced schools when you think about it, because it's a well-known fact that the demographics are changing far more rapidly in the more affluent communities these days. And this is a phenomenon that's been going on. The rules on the state level for racial imbalance are very outdated, folks. It's a 50-year-old statute. So there's an awful lot of looking at, a lot of consultant work that needs to be done, and certainly avoiding closing a school and being able to repurpose school space that the town already has. I know redistricting is sensitive. When my son was in 4th grade, 14 families were redistricted out of Daniels Farm Elementary School. It was tough on the kids, tough on the families, but also on the kids that remained at the school. It's not just the ones that get redistricted. It's tough on everybody. So we have to be very, very careful as we proceed forward. Thank you.
Ms. Pitko.
When I joined the board in 2015, they were once again having a conversation about redistricting. They had hired the consultant to look at enrollment projections and give 6 possible scenarios, and they came back and the board voted against it. Then we also approved a racial imbalance plan, and in that plan, we said to the state that once Holland Hill and Mill Hill were built to a 504 capacity, that we would look at redistricting again. So that's effectively what we're doing. We're looking at it. We gave a charge to a consultant, and we're waiting to see what the scenarios that they come back with this time, with all the variables that we've debated at the Board of Ed table. And it's not going to say that we're going to redistrict, but it is our job, our due diligence to look at this and to adequately look at our school facility utilization, where our enrollment projections are going. I can't say that one board member right now really wants to do it. It's our job to look at doing it.
Ms. Vitale.
I don't think any board member wants to redistrict. I had a child that went through the last elementary school redistricting, and to Ms. Testani's point, she was not redistricted. She stayed in her elementary school, but 80% of her school moved, along with her principal and a good number of the staff. So it is not something that anybody wants to enter in lightly. When we talk about neighborhood schools, I think we're really talking about the school that you're in. That said, I think that we have a responsibility to look at all of our options. The board spent the better part of last year talking about this. Right now, Malone and McBroom, our consultants, have our guiding principles. They are doing the work. We're looking forward to seeing what they come back with, and we'll have the discussion at that point. At that time, it'll be a community discussion. This is not something that is going to be made in haste. We are going to engage as many stakeholders as we possibly can and look to solve multiple problems. Thank you.
Ms. Rotelli.
Thank you. I believe in neighborhood schools, and I believe that if you can walk to your school, you should be able to do just that. I'm very sensitive to this topic as well. I sat through all the ad hoc redistricting committee meetings a few years ago when this was on the table, and all the scenarios had our family being redistricted to North Stratfield when we could walk to Stratfield. And it would have probably had one of my children at Tomlinson and the other child had that happened at Fairfield Woods. So I understand how this affects everybody. I understand the stress of it. I know it's unfortunate. We are facing facilities issues. We have the ECC, Walter Fitzgerald. I would also add that we learned at the beginning of the school year at one of our first SEPTA meetings that the Community Partnership Program is also looking for space. So it is our job, and we should do our due diligence to listen to the consultants, see the plans that they give us, examine them, involve the public, and see what, if anything, is available for us to do.
Thank you. Ms. Kennelly, following up on the previous question, how do you believe the methods of assigning students to middle school and high school functions, and how might this be improved?
I can guess who submitted that question. So right now, our current way of deciding the feeder pattern is by elementary school. And right now, there is not a strong push in the town to consider another method. Other possible methods would be to simply do a geographic grid, for example, on the town and say, regardless of elementary school, this grid feeds to this middle school, and thus do the same thing with the high schools. While I'm very intrigued, just hypothetically, on what that could look like and making sure that the town was balanced, I genuinely don't think there's any stomach in the town for breaking up elementary schools, for sending part of one elementary school to this middle school and part to that. So that while I am actually intrigued at what could happen with it, I just don't see that being, the redistricting will be difficult enough as it is if we pursue that path. To additionally do this with the middle schools and high schools, again, I just think it would be a very tough argument. But again, repeat that it is intriguing.
Ms. Testani.
Yes, thank you so much. We had a situation in Trumbull where we were trying to figure out what students were going to go to each of our middle schools and then to Trumbull High School as well. And the interesting thing was we actually gave some families a choice if they were on the cusp of going to either one of the middle schools. And it did work out very well for the town. I never saw it happen again, but our middle schools were balanced, people were happy, and it a lot less stress for the parents and the students.
Ms. Pitko.
So right now, I can echo everything that Mrs. Maxon Kennelly said, but right now we do have the elementary schools feeding into the middle schools. I can only guess at other ways that we could possibly look at this with the consultant, McBroom. We could look at, socioeconomic considerations or ethnicity. But honestly, one of our issues with our middle schools is we have two right next to each other. So many of the schools have to come very far away on busing to get there. Maybe in hindsight, we could have made a middle school up in the Greenville Hill area or something, but right now that's our issue. And so when we start to look at this, that's the biggest driving factor and the enrollment factors that would go into which middle school they would go to. We'd want to have enough resources for all the students and staff. We wanted to make sure that one school didn't have 100 kids while another had 300. So all of those factors have to go in. And just like this topic and so many other topics, it would be lots of meetings of discussing it because we would never do anything in haste.
Ms. Vitale.
No, I don't think the community is looking to change the way our feeder patterns for our middle school and our high school. We're still, some of us are reeling from the last middle school redistricting. I think discussing an elementary school redistricting is traumatic enough. I also think that we talk a lot about being close to home for elementary school. I think it's also important for high school, especially since there's not late buses. Students are staying after school for sports, for plays, for music. And being close to home matters for high school as well. So at this point, I think that our current system works. I think there could be, some changes in terms of what the demographic is at each of these schools based on what the demographic changes might happen at the elementary school level.
Ms. Rotelli, please.
Okay, thank you. I agree with a lot of what Ms. Vitale just said. As a parent whose daughter gets bused 40 minutes across town to Tomlinson when I live close to this school, I would love it if she were closer to home. Having said that, she is thrilled. The kids have a lot of pride in their school, and you know, I've had this discussion with her as she's my little campaign manager. We walk around together. She knows all these issues, and I've said to her, you know, how would you feel? And she's like, I don't want to leave my school. And you know, not all of us are going to be able to be at the school that's closest to us, and it is what it is. And I think if we don't need to change it and disrupt the children, then that would be a good thing.
And Ms. Gerber, please.
Yeah, I just think old habits die hard, and I think that in this case, Fairfield, having had the feeder pattern that it's had for quite some time, I think would be really difficult to break with that tradition. I would also say that, you know, we talk about splitting an elementary school. Both of my children went to middle schools that split going to high school, and that could be traumatic in its own way. So I think if you start talking about splitting elementary schools, or perhaps even in some cases having one or two streets going to a different middle school or high school from everyone else they've been with, I think that would be really difficult. And anecdotally, both of my children remained friends with their elementary school friends all the way through high school. My daughter's a senior in high school, my son's a senior in college, and he is still friends with his Osborne Hill friends, and my daughter is still friends primarily with her Osborne Hill friends. Not that they didn't make other friends, but I do think that because we do have the neighborhood school issue that's so important to us, that that really kind of builds a community that's really difficult to break, so I'd hate to see that happen.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Ms. Testani. Often attention of teachers and administrators are drawn to students who receive special education services and to those who are judged as gifted. How do you propose that students between these extremes are equally treated?
Well, we would definitely have to look at where the need is most. And I know in the area of special education, just to begin with that topic, it is ever on the rise. A special education budget can take up to 20% of a total Board of Education's budget, and that's not on the decrease. I have a best friend who's a para in the town of Monroe, and she just tells me how overburdened the whole system is with special ed. As far as the gifted program, our TAG programs in Trumbull were supported fully. It just seemed to be that the special education side of it would obviously take more funding and more attention, although we do have populations of talented and gifted students, and obviously would have to be in support of funding both of those services in the Board of Education.
Thank you. Ms. Pitko, please.
So I'm actually a member of SEPTA here in town, the special ed PTA, my daughter being a first grader. I'm also a science teacher, and so in middle school and high school science, many of the children who we try to provide inclusion, they take science and social studies or history. The thing I always said coming right out of my teacher preparation course in college was I had one class on special ed, how to work with kids. And so when they put me in my first year, I really didn't know how to modify work, how to accommodate work. I needed the help of other people, other teachers to do this. Here I am entering into my 14th year, and all children need something from me, whether it's anxiety, whether it's they need me to accommodate and give them extra time on an assignment. And as we move into things like mastery-based learning, this meets a variety of needs, but once again, it's so brand new of initiative. Most educators don't quite know what it is. They're taking professional development and they're learning about it, but the point is, if you're gonna meet the needs of all children in the school district, they all have different needs. We have amazing special programming here in Fairfield, and I'm very hopeful that we're gonna have more of that. We have great staff who work with our kids, and we have behavioral support in our school district. We have different CLCs, complex learning cohorts. My daughter happens to be in one. We have quite a few in our elementary schools. We now have them in our middle schools. And before I run out of time, because I've been apparently talking the most, I'm going to stop.
Ms. Vitale.
I appreciate that special ed is a big budget driver. And I think that one of the ways to echo a lot of my colleagues' comments is to really focus on professional development for staff. I think that they're, special ed, especially with inclusion, a general education teacher doesn't necessarily have the tools that they need to make a child who maybe has an IEP successful. So I think that we need to do more on that. Staff is also, we have SBRI, it's just scientific research-based interventions. So staff is starting earlier to look at the needs of our children and identify needs and put interventions in early before they need to access special education services, which will hopefully provide better outcomes for students and end up being a cost savings as well. But we definitely need to do more. In terms of gifted, I think that is a conversation, especially at the middle school level. I think we do a good job at the elementary school level. Our middle school, I think that we could do more there. Looking forward to hearing a presentation from our staff next week about middle school, and just one step at a time in terms of, meeting the needs of all of our learners.
Ms. Rotelli.
All right, thank you. Again, another topic that's extremely important to me. I think that one thing that's often overlooked is that a lot of our gifted and talented kids are also SPED. They're twice exceptional. And we don't need to divide and separate the kids. In my ideal world, we would stop talking about the cost of special ed and start talking about the investment. The key to success is early intervention, which is why I'm such a strong proponent for a one-site ECC. We have a successful model here in Fairfield, not only evidenced by the parents who come to speak to all of the meetings emotionally about the impact on their child, but of our higher outcomes versus surrounding districts. So when you take and invest the money into the early intervention, you can save money in the long run. And also, if you don't put that money and invest it in the kids, by 4th grade, it will take 4 times as long for that child to try to catch up to same-age peers. So, I think we should try, I know we can't, but I would love it if we would stop sort of pitting and dividing SPED versus Gen Ed.
Ms. Gerber.
Yeah, well, the mission of the Fairfield Public Schools in partnership with families and community is to ensure that every student acquires the knowledge and skills needed to be a lifelong learner, a responsible citizen, and successful participant in an ever-changing global society through a comprehensive educational program. So right there in our mission, we say every student. And I do think that it can be somewhat of a struggle to reach every student, but that is something that we are constantly working at, that it was part of our district improvement plan over the past 5 years and will be part of the new district improvement plan through professional development, through school improvement plans. There are all different ways for collaborating to find out ways to make sure that we are reaching every student, not just the students who receive additional services, that we're making sure that every single student gets the attention that they need and gets the guidance and support that they need to be able to move forward to be the best that they can be.
Ms. Kennelly.
So I had 2 immediate reactions. First of all, just a reminder to the public that it really is incorrect to refer to these as 2 extremes. Being labeled SPED is not the opposite of being labeled gifted, and I think that's important for the public to understand that so that we emulate that. We had a board member say that at the table once, and I had a strong reaction then, and I have a strong reaction now. Secondly, I believe the question was regarding the students who are labeled in the middle. The question was not about our SPED students and our gifted students, so I will refer to that. That when we are looking at all of our children, as Mrs. Gerber said, it is our mission to reach every child. And as a classroom teacher, I know well how easy it is to not pay attention to the quiet girls on the edge because I've got sophomore boys who are waiting for me to walk out of the door so they can put aluminum foil in the electric socket. True story. And so it's so easy to be distracted by higher needs students because they do need that. But it's a teacher's responsibility. It's an administrator's responsibility to keep that focus for the staff, to provide the professional development to ensure that we are reaching all of our students and that we're using data accordingly to make sure that nobody gets lost. So that's an important part of our mission, and it is part of the reason why I recommended in June that we pursue an internal audit of initiatives that we've pursued. That's not something with a cost attached to it. What are we doing that's working well? What are we doing that has promise but needs more investment? And what are ways we've been trying to reach the children that don't work? And let's recognize that and move on. So those would be my points.
Okay, the next question will start with Ms. Pitko, please. Discuss student safety in the Fairfield Public Schools. How do we create a climate that promotes safety and reduces the fear and anxiety of students and staff?
So I have 44 seconds. I'm going to go really fast. I know that Fairfield Public Schools works in collaboration with Fairfield Police Department, a lot of which we don't discuss openly for safety reasons. But it really does start with the staff in the schools and creating such a positive climate and having safety measures in place. You know, my daughter isn't actually aware that she's having a lockdown drill. I remember one of her classmates telling me, "Oh, an animal got into the school," or something to that they weren't actually afraid, and I appreciated that. And in a high school, kids take this very seriously. We unfortunately live in a part of the state that does take. I think I lost time, but
Ms. Vitale.
We have a very good working relationship with our police department, and we look to them for guidance. Our staff is well trained. We are constantly looking just for physical improvements to our facilities in terms of providing safe spaces. In terms of a positive school climate, I think just creating a nurturing environment for our students, for a place that they feel emotionally safe, is key. Going back to building those relationships between students and staff, I think that work needs to just continue to be a focus moving forward. I think we need to partner with our parents more. I think in terms of student anxiety, that work needs to be done at home, and there needs to be a strong communication, a strong partnership between parents and schools. So if we're having a lockdown, it's up to the schools to make sure that information is communicated to the parents beforehand so that they are kept in the loop. And there's just a back and forth, a reciprocal communication, that parents know what's going on at school, and if there's issues at home that the school needs to be aware of, that parents feel comfortable enough with their students' teachers their child's teachers to reach out and create those relationships.
Ms. Rotelli.
Hi, agree with what Christine said. I think it's about creating a culture at school that the kids feel comfortable. I know I served on our school climate committee. We talked about this a lot. We were all trying to collaborate on things we could do to make a positive environment with visuals around the school. I also have seen over the years our involvement with the police department, and I think that's a great working relationship. So I think we can continue to improve the facilities and the lockdown drills and just try to create those safe environments for our kids, working with the building principals and staff.
Thank you, Ms. Gerber.
Yeah, well, first of all, the district and the town have made a considerable financial investment in our school security throughout the district. In many ways, as Ms. Pitko said, in some ways that we haven't discussed publicly, but we have done that all along with the assistance of the police department, who has been invaluable in their assistance. I would say also that our school resource officers throughout the district have really become kind of part of the school community, which I think is really helpful because they're just members of the community, and it's not like this scary thing where you have a police officer there. They're in the cafeteria, they're in the gym, they're out on the playground, and I just think that having that familiarity so that if a student does have a concern, they have someone that they can go to if they need to. I think that you know, in terms of professional development, I know that staff has worked very hard to come up with as many different ways as possible to make sure that their schools are safe and secure and that their students feel safe and secure. Then you also need to look at the kind of social and emotional issues. And I think that, you know, we are all aware of the impact that stress and anxiety has on all of our students, K through 12. And I do think that there has been a lot of movement in making sure that we have programs that are available to our students on all levels to be able to seek help if they need it. I think our PTAs have also done a wonderful job in creating programming for families and for students and for staff, for that matter, to really kind of share ideas and come up with you know, directions that we can go in that are going to make our communities feel much more safe and unified, and that people can feel comfortable turning to one another when they need it. So I think that's basically it. So financial investment, physical facilities, social and emotional help to our students and to our staff, for that matter, and work with our police department, I think have all helped our district grow in a really positive way under difficult circumstances, and I have no doubt that we will continue to do that because we are all very committed as a town and as a district to making sure that we provide these services for our students.
Ms. Kennelly.
Pretty much everything I'd say has been said, so just pulling it together in one place, that in terms of promoting school safety, we do have experts to whom we have deferred with good reason, both for facilities issues and for the practices that our schools follow. Additional steps we've taken involve things like our bullying policy, our pursuit of the mental health of our students, the relationship building, the data we get from the school climate survey, and how can we ensure that that's stronger. Also the PTA support, which the PTAs have been wonderful in supporting additional programming. So those would be, again, pulling those things together, but I think we have made a lot of positive steps in this.
Well, I certainly concur with all my colleagues here tonight, and one of the things we would do in Trumbull is have regular meetings, very meaty, in-depth meetings, and go over the different security manuals with the Trumbull Police, with the administration at Trumbull High School, the middle schools, the elementary schools. And something that was mentioned earlier, which I totally agree with, is the relationship between the students and the now officers. Back in the days where my sons were in school, it was more of like a security guard type of role. But these people fostered relationships with the students, and so therefore a sense of comfort and security and was established. It was so evident when my sons were in school. Also, at the moment that something is happening, somebody mentioned a scare or, you know, a moment of alert where all the kids are maybe asked to leave the school or whatever, we need to have a good communication with the parents. So often I hear that the parents aren't exactly sure what's going on at that moment. So I see this as an area where we can improve and increase our effectiveness as a Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be brief because most of you are almost out of time, but let's see what we can do with it. What is your commitment to public education, and how have you demonstrated this commitment, Ms. Vitale?
I am deeply committed to public education. It is why I ran for the Board of Education. I'm a product of public schools. All the way through my undergrad, I went to Binghamton University in New York. I think I've proven that. Probably 15 years of being a vocal advocate in front of town bodies, advocating for education funding, advocating for building renovations, advocating for safety, advocating for special education. It's a passion of mine. I think our schools are, you know, our community's greatest assets, and go back and, you know, look at past budget meetings, and I think you will see my face and hear my shaking voice. And yes, it's still shaking because it's still a passion of mine, and that's why I ran for the board 2 years ago and why I'm running again.
Hi. I'm a very passionate parent. I have been involved ever since my children started the Early Childhood Center, which was about 10 years ago. And at the risk of sounding redundant to my closing statement, which you'll hear about, I have attended meetings for the past 10 years. I've been very involved in the Board of Ed, and anything I could get my hands on that would make me more knowledgeable at the Fairfield Public Schools. So I'm sitting at the same meetings, sitting in the back with my shaky voice. You've probably seen my face too, advocating, and there's no place I'd rather be.
Thank you. Ms. Gerber.
Okay, I have no time at all. I'm a product of public schools, and for 17 years, I have devoted my life to volunteering for the Fairfield Public School System, and I would like to do it for another 4 years.
Thank you.
That's good. That was really good.
Ms. Kennelly.
So my commitment to public school, I too went to public school for K through 12, so it's an experience that was invaluable to me. I selected it, or it selected me as my mission. I've now been working in education for 29 years. For my 3 children, when we were searching for a home, we chose Fairfield because of the public schools, and all 3 of my children have gone through that system, 2 of whom are very successfully enrolled in college, and the 3rd is a junior at Ward. And then myself getting involved beyond my professional commitment with PTAs, the Cultural Diversity Task Force, being approached about serving on the Board of Education. I think my commitment to public education has been robust and consistent.
Thank you.
So for me, I'm also a Fairfield native and a proud product of the Fairfield public school system. After graduating from Housatonic Community College, I began my 32-year professional municipal career with the town of Greenwich. So I have an extensive interest in the public. Both of my parents held public office here in Fairfield, so from a very early age, I grew up with an instilled nature of commitment to public service and volunteerism. I volunteered for years in the Trumbull Public School System. Obviously, it's a like district in the Derg, a very high-performing school district, as is Fairfield. I do have a son that suffered with ADHD. I'm very compassionate about special ed, as well as being supportive of the Talented and Gifted program. I have the time and the dedication, the knowledge and the expertise to dedicate to the town of Fairfield. Thank you.
And Ms. Pitko, please.
Parent, teacher, volunteer, taxpayer.
You're just as good as Jess.
Thank you for obeying all the rules. Well done for people who are on the Board of Education. If the timers would reset, we will now do closing statements, 2 minutes each, and I will stop you. Okay, we will start as we did at the beginning with Ms. Vitale.
I would like to thank you all for coming out on this rainy evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting, and thank you to my fellow candidates for the robust conversation. As the current chair of the Board of Education, I will be honest. My primary concern is making sure that this election does not disrupt the respectful and collaborative spirit this board has fostered. The current board works well together, is knowledgeable, and is committed to the mission of the Fairfield Public Schools, as Mrs. Gerber read. I don't want to lose that. Consistency is important. The board is in the middle of a number of complex discussions, and I would hate to see us backtrack. I want to finish the work that I have started. More importantly, I want to support the work of our new superintendent as he continues to move our district forward. In the coming year, the Board of Education will be approving a new district improvement plan, reevaluating our long-range facilities plan, and again addressing the town's racial imbalance. We need board members who have an appreciation of the past, an understanding of today's priorities, and are sensitive to the needs of the greater community. Prior to serving on the board, I was very active in the PTA. I was the PTA president at Roger Ludlow Middle School and Fairfield Ludlow High School, and have also served on the PTA executive boards at Dwight, Tomlinson, and SEPTA. I have built a strong working relationship within the community and have been a vocal advocate for public education for over 15 years. My reasons for first running for a seat on the Board of Education have not changed much. I believe that our schools are one of our town's greatest assets and the backbone of our community. They're a big part of the reason my husband and I moved to Fairfield 23 years ago and chose to raise our family here. All three of my children have benefited from a Fairfield Public Schools education. My daughters are Ludlow graduates, and my son's in 7th grade at Roger Ludlow Middle School. 2 years ago, I ran for the Board of Education because I wanted to ensure that future generations of children had the same positive experience my children had. That still holds true today. Having served on the board for 2 years, I bring experience as well as a fresh perspective. I think my record shows my commitment and willingness to work across party lines to do what is best for our students. Hopefully you will agree and give me an opportunity to serve for 4 more years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rotelli.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Ms. Moderator, all of you who came out tonight, and those watching on FairTV. I'm here tonight asking for your vote for a term on Fairfield's Board of Education. My husband and I moved to Fairfield in 2002, and we have 2 daughters in middle school. I have been actively involved in Fairfield Public Schools since my oldest daughter entered the Early Childhood Center. When people ask me my qualifications, I can list the years of volunteer positions, co-chairing the Early Childhood Center parent group, the Special Education PTA, and Stratfield PTA's executive board positions, including Board of Ed rep, Board of Ed budget rep, programming rep, fundraising rep, ECC rep, and secretary, and my most recent position as RTM rep for District 4. But when I really think about the answer to that question, I always come back to the same thing. I'm a mother. I remember attending my first PPT at the Early Childhood Center. I was completely overwhelmed, surrounded at a table with about a dozen educational professionals, all making recommendations for my child. I heard terms like procedural safeguards, FAPE, LRE, ESY, and I decided in that minute that I would learn as much about this school system as I could so that I could actively participate as not just a member, but the leader of her team. Since then, I have attended countless meetings, from PTA to Board of Ed, from forums to conferences, to keep myself as informed as possible so that I can be the most effective advocate for my children. If I've learned anything over the years, it's that when I take on a role, whether it be the RTM, PTA, SEPTA, advocate, or mother, I will always be a person of integrity. I will always be a strong leader that works collaboratively with others towards our objectives. I will always be respectful and honest, and I will always give that role 100%. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope you'll vote for me this November.
Ms. Gerber.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity, and thank you to everyone who came out tonight. I've lived in Fairfield for 23 years. My husband and I chose to raise our family here in great part because of the school system. I believe that public education is the heart and soul of a community, and I want to have the opportunity to continue to work and advocate in support of our schools. I've been on the Board of Ed since 2011. Before that, I was the Board of Ed rep at Osborne Hill School, and I also served on a number of committees and task forces regarding facilities, redistricting, and strategic planning. Since my election to the board, I have been secretary for 8 years, liaison to SEPTA for 1 year, liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission for 8 years, liaison to the Ludlow Building Committee, the Osborne Hill Building Committee, and the Mill Hill Building Committee. I was also chair of the board's ad hoc communications subcommittee. And I have a personal Board of Ed Facebook page which provides information on everything from meetings, curriculum, and the budget, to snow days, open house schedules, and when the last day of school is. The future Board of Ed is facing many weighty topics: the revision of the 10-year long-range facilities plan, development and approval of the 5-year district improvement plan, and reviewing, approving, and supporting the yearly operating budget. So, to sum things up, as a Board of Education member, I bring the following to the table: 17 years as a Fairfield Public School parent and PTA member, 5 years as a Board of Ed rep, 8 years as a Board of Ed member. I have invested so much of my time, effort, and energy in working with and for our PTAs, our administrators, and our teachers, and I would be honored to spend another 4 years doing just that. While this may be my last year as a parent in the Fairfield Public School system, I have no intention or desire to end my work and advocacy for the school system that has done so much for my family and for the families of the thousands of students who walk through its doors every year. I hope to have the opportunity to continue to use my experience and historical perspective to help maintain a strong, safe, welcoming community of learning for the thousands of students in Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennelly.
So thank you for this opportunity. To understand my 8-year commitment to the Fairfield Board of Education, let me tell you what I've brought to every day working for 29 years as an educator to facilitate individual growth and maintain relentless focus on goals. When my principal asked me to help Lorette and Joanne prepare for the New York State Mastery Tests, I readily answered yes with little idea of the nature of the challenge. Working to achieve mastery seemed to involve as many steps backwards as forward, but in never losing sight of the goal, the girls made it. Another time, I met Tasha walking into the gym with the swagger of an NBA star. But no NBA star arrives at school using a single-use CVS bag as a backpack. Navigating her defense mechanisms and making her see that I recognized her dreams, valued them, and could facilitate her moving along that path to an eventual scholarship to Syracuse University was my mission. Then there was Ferris, whose intellectual ability far outstripped his maturity. He was quite content in my non-honors class, even as I knew that he had resources that he had not begun to tap into. Working with him over the course of the year to inspire him to stretch toward more rigorous goals was rewarded with his academic scholarship as a pre-med major at UConn. This is the inspiration for each new school year. So whether it's grappling with unforeseen obstacles, partnering with able professionals to help bring a vision to reality, or seeing the potential in a raw idea or unexplored resource and collaborating to capitalize on its strengths, these are just a few of the ways that my experience in education is something which continues to inspire my approach to our board issues. In my leadership on the policy committee, my contributions to the district improvement plan, my probing facility and budget issues, and my advocacy and challenging of views. In all of this, I exercise the same approaches. Ultimately, it is my passion for teaching and for demanding more from all that I bring to my service on the Board of Ed. I ask for your vote on Election Day to work with my fellow board members and staff, and thank you.
Ms. Pitko, I'm sorry, Ms. Testani.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out this evening. I'm absolutely thrilled to be back in my hometown. And during the time that my sons were in school, I chaired and or served on many committees, oftentimes the committees that other parents or volunteers were not as eloquent and willing to chair. I volunteered as a junior achievement classroom consultant and also served on the executive board of the Trumbull Business Education Initiative, or Trumbull BEI. In 2003, I was appointed to the Trumbull Board of Recreation, and in 2007, I successfully ran for election to the Trumbull Town Council. In 2009, I became the council vice chairman and chairman of the very busy Legislation and Administration Committee. In 2015, I was honored to be elected to the Trumbull Board of Education and then selected as its vice chairman by the existing board members. I was chairman of the Policy Committee and vice chairman of the Finance Committee. I also served as the liaison to the Trumbull Agri-Science Center. By the time my term ended in December of 2017, Trumbull Public Schools were second only to Darien and the Derg for overall performance and test scores. I'm very, very proud to be able to leave that legacy behind, and honored and grateful. It is my goal to give back to the community I've loved since my youth. My father, Bill Cox, as I mentioned before, was a former state representative candidate and former chairman of the Board of Taxation Review. My mother, Dolores, served on planning and zoning. So as I mentioned earlier, I grew up with an instilled nature of commitment to public service and volunteerism. I believe my vast knowledge of municipal policies and practices, coupled with a successful 14-year career of being an elected official, makes me the ideal choice for a seat on Fairfield's Board of Education. It is my sincere hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you will consider voting for me on November the 5th. Thank you.
Ms. Pitko, please.
I just want to start by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm not going to lie, I get nervous coming here. I want to thank every single person that's in this audience on this horrible rainy day, because I've been listening to it, and that just shows your commitment to coming here and being a part of our community and fighting for education. I had a lot of things I could say, and as you can see, I have no papers in front of me because I just speak from the heart. I have two things that I want to use this time for. Number one, I want to thank my mom. I'm a single mom. I can't do any of this without her. If she would, and I know she's watching. Well, she will watch. But I have to thank her because growing up, she was the one talking. My mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican. There was always this conversation in my house and this idea that you volunteer and you give back to your community. So, Mom, thank you very much. What I really want to talk about is 33 years ago, my mom moved us into Fairfield because she wanted us to have a better education. Single mom, 3 boys, we went to McKinley. And at McKinley, I met a family who I've been friends with since. And unfortunately, that mother is dying now. And I thought every day since she told me this news that when I get up in the morning, today is going to be the way I want to live my life. And what I want to do is raise my daughter in Fairfield and have the best education system and the best Board of Ed. Because we are completely not political. We do what's best for these students, these teachers, this staff. And I want to continue to spend every day of the next 4 years doing that.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the candidates. You may applaud now. I think that the entire Fairfield community can be proud of the fact that one of the winners of the Nobel Prize in Medicine went to Tomlinson and Ludlow. On a personal note, I was on the Fairfield Board of Education for too many years, and some of the issues are the same. It's really interesting the way it comes around. So I wish you all well, and to the audience and to all of you, the debate for the selectmen and first the Board of Selectmen and Selectmen will take place here next week at 7:30. Thank you all, and good night.